I'm Justin Adams. Now, the Denver Broncos are off this week, and I know, look, they have the bye week. They're trying to recover. They're 3-6 on the year, but we still have a lot to talk about with this football team. With that, let's take it to a man who has done some work with the Denver Broncos before. That's Ted Sundquist, former Broncos general manager. Ted, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, Justin.
We did a couple of games at Altitude Sports and Entertainment as well, so we got that chemistry and everything together, but a couple of different things to talk about. Obviously, you've been with the Broncos organization for a long time, from 1992 to 2008, and you know the ins and outs of how to go put a team together. Right. And the main reason that I wanted to bring you here today, and obviously, number one, as you're watching on Facebook Live, you can always leave us with a comment. We will go and leave you with a comment back, and we want you to ask your questions as well to Ted Sundquist, anything that you have about putting a football team together. Everybody thinks it's easy to go and win championships. You know, everybody thinks it's simple and easy to go and get a guy like, oh, John Elway should be able to go and find a quarterback. You know, he should be able to find that guy. He should be able to get a winning football team. You know it. You sat in that seat. You know how difficult it is. So wanted to bring you aboard and have you talk about just some of the ins and outs of being a general manager.
Yeah, primarily I think you've got to be open to any and every way that you can to improve your roster, right? So you've got to have a good understanding of what you've got on your team at 53. And I used to use a thing called 20-70-10, which was basically breaking down the roster into your top 20%, which is your top 10 players. Those are your franchise guys. You really want to build around them. And then you've got 70% in the middle, which is the beef of your team. And I broke that down into three categories, kind of A, B, and C. You had guys that wanted to rise from that A group into the top 10. So maybe guys that you were looking at to develop and re-sign with the big money, okay? And then a lot of guys right in that middle that are just good core special teams guys, good backup guys. Then you might have down there in that C level a group of players that were younger, trying to learn the game, you know, maybe popped off of a practice squad or you picked up on, you know, free agent waivers or something. And then you had a group down at the bottom that were at the end of their career, and you just, hey, what can we do to replace these guys and to get better? And there were a number of ways to do that. You can draft. There's free agency. There's claiming off the waiver wire. There's stealing off the practice squad, which I love doing that.
That's the best part.
So just a lot of different ways to improve your football team. And you had to be in tune with that constantly and know how it affected that chemistry in the locker room, how it worked with the coaches and their game plans. And again, fitting it all into the salary cap.
Yeah, it's not your average 9-to-5 job, obviously, being a general manager. That's a lot to come with it. Let's take a quick look at your resume because you did a lot of great stuff with the Broncos. 16 years, and you had the second highest winning percentage at .604. You were 58-38 record. Also took the Broncos to an AFC title appearance in 2005. We don't want to talk about that game. We're still upset with the Pittsburgh Steelers with that one. But you signed guys like John Lynch, Daniel Graham. I mean, drafted Clinton Portis in the second round. Had a trade for Jay Cutler as well. And you made a big trade, which was, you know, trading Clinton Portis for Champ Bailey. There's a lot of different things that you've done. Out of all the moves that you've made, which one stands out the most?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I think it's that last one, and it's because of what happened this past summer with Champ Bailey being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And, you know, he didn't start with this organization. Certainly he built his career and his reputation as a Washington Redskin. But then the opportunity to take a really, who I thought was a great player for us in Clinton Portis, back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons, and be able to, you know, to trade him to Washington and then to get a Hall of Famer and what Champ meant to that defense, that's probably my proudest moment.
Everybody, you know, even myself, always thought, well, it was to beat the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, Peyton Manning was throwing the ball all over the place during that time, and you had to go and make sure you had a DB who was able to hold up over there. And Champ did very, very well during his time with the Denver Broncos. But let's start off there. I want to take you back to that trade. How did that come to be? I mean, we all have different stories. Everybody knows what happens from the surface standpoint, but you're the guy who made the move. How did it all come to be?
And it's a great question. And you look back, and we go back to what it takes to be a good general manager. And I think it's creating relationships, communicating with the clubs, kind of being in tune with what people need. And every year, the Denver Broncos, a lot of people don't know this, would share a suite at the Super Bowl with the Washington Redskins. And my wife and I would go represent the club at the Super Bowl. It was a chance for me to kind of wine and dine her and say, hey, hon, I'm sorry for all those late nights and being gone all the time and you having to walk the dogs in the morning by yourself. But let's go to the Super Bowl this year. And Dan Snyder was there, and he would always ask me, hey, you know, what do you think about this and what do you think about that? And he had, for lack of a better term, an infatuation with Clinton Portis. Clinton was the hot running back at that time, becoming one of the faces of the NFL, and I think Dan was intrigued with that. On the other side, he had Champ Bailey, whose contract was getting ready to run out. I think a little bit disgruntled with the direction that the club was going. And so Dan, I think, was kind of feeling, hey, is there a possibility here? So fast forward then from there, we go to the Senior Bowl, and I'm sitting up and I am freezing in Ladd Peebles Stadium at Montgomery, Alabama, up on the top, trying to look down and look at all the various drills. And up come through the stands comes Jack Rial. And Jack Rial is Champ Bailey's agent, or was Champ's agent, and was actually the guy who enshrined Champ and gave him his gold jacket. And Jack had also represented Jason Elam for us. So I had just been through a pretty intense negotiation with Jack. We had some fun time going back and forth and getting Jason re-signed. And Jack came up and said, hey, you know, I think I can do something for you if you have some interest here. You know, Champ wants out of Washington, and I think I can help you orchestrate a trade. And I'm like, really? Tell me more. So I warmed up real quick. It wasn't so cold in Ladd Peebles at that time. And he went through a little bit of what Champ had been going through in Washington. He asked me if he thought that Mike would be open to trading someone like Clinton. I said, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I just spent, you know, the Super Bowl talking to Mr. Schneider about Clinton Portis for us. And I went back to Mike and I said, hey, you're not going to believe the conversation that I just had. Jack Rial thinks that we can get Champ Bailey for Clinton Portis. And he goes, well, what do you think? And I said, you know, Clinton has really outperformed his second-round contract. He's going to want an extension. We haven't done that in the past. We've kind of held tight there. We don't really want to go through a holdout, and working with his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, can be difficult at times. Drew was a challenge.
Yeah, 100%. Still is today, yeah.
And you know, Coach, we need that lockdown guy, like you mentioned, Justin, to try to stop the Colts here. We keep running into these guys, and we need somebody back there that we can just lock up on their best receivers. And yeah, let's make a run at it. And really, that was the genesis of the start of the trade.
Yeah, it was a great trade for the Denver Broncos. Champ Bailey was around for 10 years in orange and blue, and look, Pro Football Hall of Famer, the first Broncos defender to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and now is a Ring of Famer. So I got to ask this question too: who won the trade? Did the Broncos win, or did the Redskins win?
You know, that's a hard one. I'm a big Clinton Portis fan. You know, we got him in the second round. And I truly felt like Clinton was a first-round value at that particular point, and we got an opportunity to get him. He was very valuable to our football team there. But ultimately, in the end, Champ did come in. We won a lot of football games with him back there as a quiet leader in that secondary. And then to put that gold jacket on, I got to think that Denver feels really good about what they got out of that trade.
100%. We were talking a little bit earlier, and you were mentioning that you don't know if a blockbuster trade like that, could ever happen again in the NFL. It was really just a mesh of a couple of different perfect storms coming together in order for that trade to happen.
Yeah, it really was. I think, you know, again, for a second-round draft pick like Clinton at the running back position, which arguably could be, you know, argued that number 2 behind quarterback with regards to the face of a club. If you've got a really hot running back, people center on that rushing game. And certainly at that point, Clinton was one of the players that was rising in the NFL, highly, highly thought of. And, you know, it was just a situation where he was working on a second-round contract. He had already had 2 years into it. We only had probably 2, maybe 1 left, and to trade him, the cap hit wasn't going to be that big of a deal for us. But to re-sign him for the type of money that he wanted, when we've been so successful at that position, finding players that fit into the system, just didn't make a lot of sense for us. And cornerback is one of those positions where when you know you've got a good one, you go and get them, and that's why the good ones go high in the first round. And so for an opportunity for a club like ours, who was usually drafting on the back end, to get a guy who had proven himself in the NFL already, was a Pro Bowl player, like you said, and could mesh in from a personality standpoint really well with our club, just made a lot of sense. But today, you know, usually you're looking, if you're trying to trade a value like Clinton Portis for a value like Champ Bailey, both clubs are not going to want to be on the short end. You're dealing with, you know, cap hits and things that it just makes it difficult to make these things happen.
Another trade that you made was for Jay Cutler as well.
Yes,
That was a draft day trade going back in 2006. You moved up. I believe you were all the way in the 20s at the time. Moved all the way from. That's where you guys came off the AFC Championship appearance. Came from the 20s,
exactly.
all the way up to 11th. Made a trade with the St. Louis Rams. You picked up Jay Cutler. So take me through that trade. Obviously, we know what happened with Jay Cutler. He was here for 3 years, 17-20 record with the Broncos before he was shipped off to the Chicago Bears. But what was the mindset in that trade? We had a guy already at quarterback already.
With Jake Plummer,
with Jake Plummer,
and a very popular player in the locker room.
Yes.
Now, let's go back before draft day, because actually we're sitting down around 29, I think, 28, right in there.
Yep.
And there was a three-way trade between the Atlanta Falcons, the New York Jets, and the Denver Broncos that I think sent Kevin Abraham somewhere in there. But it gave Denver an opportunity to move from 28, 29 up to 15.
Right.
So prior to the draft, we were in a trade that moved us up to 15, and we had not picked as high as 15 since we had taken John Mobley my first year as director of college scouting out of Kutztown with the first pick, a linebacker. And so I went to Mike and I said, Coach, you know, we don't get an opportunity like this very often to be in a striking distance from 15 to trade up into 10. You know, the cost to trade from 29 to 10 or 9 or 8 is astronomical on draft day. But to go from 15 to 10 is a little bit different. And there were 3 franchise quarterbacks in that draft that year. There was Vince Young, Matt Leinart, and Jay Cutler. And that was arguably true with the entire league. Everyone felt like those 3 guys were franchise-type quarterbacks, top 10 picks. Right. We knew that Vince Young was going to go to Tennessee because Bud Adams had an infatuation with Vince from the University of Texas, and rightfully so. Yeah. What a fantastic run in the national championship that year.
But let me put it this way, not to cut you off, but this ring that I have here, this was a 2005 Big 12 North Championship.
Okay.
The reason why it's not a Big 12 championship ring
is Vince Young.
70-3. I'll put it that way.
Oh,
so
man. I'm sorry. So you saw how good Vince Young was.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
But we knew that Leinart and Cutler one of those two might come dropping down just because it's very unusual for quarterbacks to go 1, 2, 3, and then you start looking at teams' needs and what they drafted the year prior. And so in my mind, there was an opportunity that one of those 2 guys might get down around 10, and would the cost be that astronomical that we couldn't go up? And so we went into the draft looking at quarterback, studying those guys very close as a backup plan in case, you know, we couldn't move up to 10 or we had the chance to move up, that we could go for him. But, you know, initially we wouldn't have been looking at quarterback. And you've got Jake Plummer coming off probably his best year in his career. Yeah. So what happens? Down they start sliding. Yeah. So about at pick number 8, I turned to Coach and I said, hey, you want me to get on the phone? And he goes, yeah, start calling. So we call it 8, and I don't recall who was there, but nah, we've got our guy. We call it 9. Nah, we've got our guy. Number 10 is Arizona. So now there's 2 quarterbacks sitting there. And Arizona's like, nah, we think we know who we want. And I'm like, Coach, we got a shot at this now. Because even if it's Leinart, Cutler's going to be available there at number 11. And sure enough, we call the Rams, and the Rams are like, nah, we think we want to trade out. Arizona takes Leinart. The deal's already made with the Rams by then to move up to 11. We go ahead and pay the price, and Jay's available. And we felt like we had the opportunity to draft a franchise-type quarterback, top 10 value pick, and then the idea was to go, and we had talked about this, the idea was to go like Green Bay had done with Aaron Rodgers, sitting behind Brett Favre, kind of learning, apprenticing behind an established veteran quarterback, leader of that team, and learn and then slide in just like Aaron did. I mean, perfect scenario. Green Bay played it to the T. Yeah. Denver, not so quiet. Not so much.
Well, you had different circumstances because, again, at that time, Jake Plummer, he was still rolling with the Broncos, still having things going on with them. I mean, at one point, the team was 7-2, and then things start to crack, which led to Jay Cutler actually playing in the 06 season.
Yeah, and the thing to recall, the fans should recall, is that Gary Kubiak was a big part of that offense the year before with Jake Plummer, had gotten Jake to where he was at and playing at a high level. And then Gary got the job in Houston. He leaves, and in comes Mike Heimerdinger, who is not so much a play-action pass type guy, bootleg rollout, the things that we did with Jake. he wanted to throw from the pocket, and that's not Jake Plummer's deal. However, it was Jay Cutler's deal. And so you get to 7-2. There's some question marks with regards to how the offense is performing. Is Jake giving us everything that we've got? And we kind of fell, to be quite honest with you, to the same circumstances that a lot of clubs have today. Hey, we got this young first-round pick. Why aren't you playing him? Get him in there. Let's get him in there and see what he can do. What a waste to having him sitting on the bench. And, you know, the organization, I think, ultimately caved to that. And, you know, Jay came in, became the starter. The locker room, I think, was a little shaky, not because of Jay, but because they respected Jake so much.
Right.
Jay, I don't want to say was given something that he hadn't earned yet, but the circumstances kind of played out that way. And it wasn't really fair to both Jake and Jay, to be quite honest with you, or the rest of the club.
How much different would the Broncos franchise be? Obviously, we know that, you know, you get Tim Tebow down the road, you get Peyton Manning to come here as a free agent, but how much different would the Broncos be if Jay Cutler would have sat the 06 season, if he would have waited around until 07 or even 2008 until he was the starting quarterback?
You know,
for the Broncos?
Justin, that's a great question. I mean, history would have only told that. I'll say this, that Jake Plummer was a competitor. And even if he wasn't playing at that particular point as well as he wanted to, I know Jake Plummer as a person both then and even today. He would have fought his rear end off to get things turned around. The club, who knows? We might have rebounded from that Kansas City game, come back and won a couple games, gotten into the playoffs, and not a problem. And from Jay's perspective, I think Jay had all the tools that you're looking for. Strength, presence in the pocket, tremendous football acumen. He actually was a smart football player. And could run. He could for a big guy, he could really run. But the maturity level of handling a football team and being in that position, you know, some of the pressures that come with being a professional quarterback, especially in the city of Denver.
Yes.
I just don't know that Jay was quite prepared for that. And ultimately, I'm not sure that the organization helped guide him through that process in the manner that we should have. Had he had that opportunity, knowing how we were doing business at that particular point in time, I think he could have been a tremendous quarterback here in Denver and possibly taken us to the Super Bowl.
A lot of things could have changed so quickly and so easily as well. Just a lot of things. Just would have been a whole lot different for the Denver Broncos just in general, as we're speaking with Ted Sundquist, former general manager of the Denver Broncos. I want to take you to today now, though.
Okay.
As we take a look at our picks for diapers, this is some little fun that we have. We're going to go to that a little bit, all right? As you can see, Britt Moreno, she is 14-6, and I'm 15-5. She got some work to do this week, to say the least. So
you're one huggy up on her. Right?
I want to hug you up on that. We'll go to those games in a little bit. But I want to talk about today's team. I want to talk about the Denver Broncos, the way that they are right now. The Broncos haven't been to the playoffs since 2015, and everyone knows about the struggles. The team is 3-6 right now, same record that they were last year at the bye week, 3-6. And people are asking, what the heck is going on? What do you see when you have a chance to look from afar? Again, you being the general manager, what do you see are some of the biggest issues within the Broncos for the reason why they're not back to their winning ways?
Well, when I look back, you know, at why we were so successful over the 14 years with Mike Shanahan, and even to a degree the 9 years prior with Dan Reeves, and not to even say that we were a bad football team under Wade Phillips for 2 years, but there was stability. There was stability at the top of the organization with regards to ownership. Mr. Bolin was a big part of how we did business, not necessarily why and what we did, but how we went about doing business. There was the Bronco way of doing things.
Right.
There was an understanding from the grounds crew to the video guys to the guys in sports medicine to the guys up in the scouting department where I was at to the coaching staff that every day that you walked into Dove Valley, it was about winning a Super Bowl championship. And I'm not saying that that's not the mantra and the goal, the Broncos, but at the same time, there's a way of going about doing that, a way about doing business that builds stability and trust and confidence amongst everybody in the building and eventually leads to success. And to me, looking from the outside in, it just seems like right now, since Mr. Bolin has been, you know, well, he's since passed away, but had stepped back, that there's kind of been a loss of identity. You know, we talked about all those years and the success. That's 3 head coaches. That's Mike for, you know, 14 years and Wade for 2 and Dan for previous 9. We've been through more coaches than that. And
4 coaches in 6 years.
I mean, incredible.
Yeah.
And that has an effect on players, on personnel. We talked about all the great running backs that we had, and why Clinton Portis was expendable for a guy like Champ, because we had a system that everybody knew, and we knew how to fit players into that system. And right now, as I look at Denver, I'm not sure what that system is.
Right.
I'm not sure what that identity is. And it's got to be frustrating for some folks that are still in the building that remember how it was beforehand. If they can find that identity and find some stability and regain that confidence in one another, because ultimately, it's the people in that building and the players that you put out on the field and how they perform, and it's your responsibility to make sure they have all the tools to perform well. All the noise on the outside, if you can shut them out, you can overcome that. But right now, the noise is affecting how decisions are made, and it's frustrating.
Well, part of the noise right now is at the quarterback position, obviously,
Right.
and saying, hey, you need to go and put Drew Lock in. Drew Lock, this, second-round pick. He's the new quarterback. He's the guy who should be in the game. I know Brandon Allen is the guy with the keys to the offense right now. What should be the right move for a guy like Drew Lock? If you were the GM right now and you had Drew Lock, your team is 3-6 on the year. Doesn't look like you will make the playoffs, but you never know. Things do happen. I mean, 4 teams in NFL history have made it to the playoffs with a 3-6 record. But what would you do with the whole Drew Lock situation?
Well, you have to weigh both sides of the coin, Justin. The one side is that you're 3-6. Your chances of making the playoffs are you're going to have to go on a 7-0 run, go 10-6, and hope that some other teams lose out. So you're out of the playoffs. So one side of the coin says, hey, get in there and let's see what he can do. Let's let the offense start getting comfortable with him. Let's let him get a few games underneath his belt and see if he can go. I understand that side as well. You flip it over to the other side, and let's say if there's issues with the offensive line, which there's been a lot of talk about, they run the football effectively. Phillips had another fantastic season, the ability to make those big plays. We've seen those burst out the last couple of weeks.
Right.
But if you put him in a situation where he's set to fail and that confidence level doesn't build off this year, coming off of an injury too, I mean, in his mind, is he comfortable doing the things that he feels like, made him a top prospect coming out of college last season? You could hurt him that way as well.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I mean, there's a little bit of a flip of the coin there. I do think with the way Allen performed, a younger quarterback who maybe this system is suited for him, with a Lock, you need to find out what you've got so that you don't go into 2020 draft going, okay, did we miss on Lock? Do we need to draft another quarterback? Answer some of these questions. Use these next couple of weeks to find out those answers and let the team get comfortable and build some confidence.
How many games does Drew Lock need to play before you as a GM or even as a scout, somebody who could sit there and say, I know for sure that this is either going to be the guy for the future or this will not be the guy?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, especially at this particular point in the season, because he hasn't played a long time. He's going to come in he will be rusty. It'll take some time to get back to that game speed. So can you rely on game 1 and 2? Well, now you're 2 into those 7 that I talked about.
Right.
The last 5, is that indicative enough of what he's capable of doing for 2020? Maybe, but the sooner the better. It's really come down to that. Otherwise, probably the best thing to do would be hey, can Brandon Allen be a number 1 or a 2 next year? Let's see what he can do with the team. And then let Lock come into camp next year and have kind of a mulligan, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, give him some time to get his feet wet at the NFL level. And another thing, too, is give him an opportunity to play a road game. There's reports that he will play the last 2 games, which are both home games. But what happens on the road? What happens when you have a silent count? What happens when things aren't going your way? How does your quarterback react? I mean, let's call it what it is. If Drew Lock can't go into Kansas City and win a game in Kansas City, then you probably don't have the right quarterback.
That's a great point, because really all roads right now lead through the Chiefs, not only in 2019, but I think in the future as well, because Patrick Mahomes has shown what he's capable of doing for that club when healthy. And it's hard for me to see Mahomes and Andy Reid and the rest of that crew right now, with the talent they've got around there, not being thought of at the top of the AFC West for the next couple of years. So you're exactly right. If he can go in and play lights out against the Chiefs in Arrowhead and take on all those distractions that place brings, whether it's weather, whether it's the noise, whether it's just the Chiefs team in general, then you've probably got something in the future here in Denver.
A couple more questions with Ted Sundquist, former Denver Broncos general manager from 2002 through 2008. I want to go and continue to talk about the quarterback position because everybody thinks, again, John Elway, he should be able to find a quarterback.
Right.
He's a Hall of Fame guy. He should be able to find this guy. And why hasn't John Elway found this quarterback yet? He's looking for himself. It's so difficult. Well, you know how tough it is to find that franchise quarterback. In today's day, well, really two questions. Number one, in today's day, how tough is it to find a franchise guy? Because there's only a few in the history of the league. It's so difficult to find it. And number two, you have a theory of a reason why maybe more fans know more about guys like Drew Lock, the second round or the third round pick, than maybe even any other sport, and they want to see these guys play.
Yeah, the quarterback position is the marquee position, not only at the professional level, but it's become that way at the collegiate level as well. I mean, who are the big guys right now? Tua in Alabama, and the guys, Kyler Murray coming out last year, and all the big names. The Heisman race is always centered around that quarterback position. And so over the last 10 years, and you and I have talked about how media has changed the game, the information that the fans are privy to, the number of games that they actually get to see. I mean, we use this analogy, right? Who did the Milwaukee Brewers take in the first round last year of the Major League Baseball draft?
No clue.
I don't even know. And is that guy even on the big league team right now? He's probably down in Double-A somewhere at 18 years of age, being allowed to mature and grow into eventually making it to the big league club. Whereas in the NFL game, not only are the draft picks and draft day a big part of it, but the whole process prior to it, and even the maturation process through college, the fans are like, hey, this guy's ready to go. He played this way at Missouri or Oklahoma or Alabama or wherever. Plug him right in and let's just get going. And it's not that easy. And so as an organization, you've sometimes got to either put the blinders on and not watch something, or put the earplugs in and not listen to something, and stick with your guns. And it appears that John's trying to do that with Drew Lock right now. Give him time to recover from the injury, to feel confident out there in the practice field with throwing the football. But again, I feel like in today's game, with the way we are covered, we're almost our own worst enemies as a sport. We don't have an opportunity for some of these young guys to come out of college and to grow both physically and mentally into the pro game, like maybe basketball with the developmental league, or baseball with the various levels they have underneath the major league club. And really, football needs that. They really do. And it puts a lot of pressure on the club. There's opportunity cost that goes by the wayside. I drafted a quarterback. He's not playing. And now the fans are going, well, you could have taken that running back or a wide receiver if you weren't going to play the quarterback, and he could be helping us right now. Because they see the production right now. It's faster at those positions. So.
And you're doing a lot of work right now, even though you're not the GM, obviously, anymore with the Broncos, but you're doing a lot of work to help out the young players to be able to mature faster into the NFL.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, I've started a company called Sports Virtual Training Systems, or Sports VTS, and our first product is called the QB Sim. And it's taking philosophies that I learned from my days in the Air Force, which is with pilots, you have the same problem. Highly skilled, highly competent, very smart guys, but they need repetitions in the cockpit. There's only one way to fly, and that's to get up in the cockpit and actually practice your maneuvers and the communication process and everything that goes into combat. Well, I thought, how can we take that concept and transfer that to football? Can we build a realistic simulator for quarterbacks and other positions so that they can go on the field and face all those elements of crowd noise and an extremely realistic opponent on the other side of the defense, and perhaps heat and cold and whatnot? And we came up with the QB Sim, and it's literally putting the quarterback into virtual reality and placing him on Arrowhead or at Mile High or in the black hole up in Oakland, and throwing a real football and then playing that virtual opponent and having to make those real-time decisions, split-second decisions, moving around in the pocket as if you were right there, but having all those realistic pressures that come on that position in virtual reality, and then be able to take it off and go, Whew, I didn't get hit there. That was good.
That's the best part about it, is you don't have to get any licks. Ted, before we let you go, is there anything that fans should know about the general manager position that they can walk away from and just know differently? Obviously, it's not a 9-to-5 job. This is maybe 6 in the morning to 9 at night type of deal. Like, you're always working on different moves. What's something that fans should know about a general manager and what makes them successful?
Well, from a GM's perspective, there is never an off time. It's 365, like you said, 12 months out of the year. You know, I think one of the things that gets lost sometimes is the responsibility that a GM has, not only to putting the roster together, but to supporting and building the rest of the organization. And I talked about that, the video department, you know, having the top guys in there, getting on committees throughout the league and having your team's voice heard on how business is done. You know, the top medical crew, being part of the I was on the Combine committee for 14 years, and so I was part of inviting the players from college onto the Combine, what drills were run, things like that. I think, you know, a really good general manager shouldn't just be judged or looked upon, and ultimately it is on wins and losses and the team that you put out there, but how he handles the whole organization and builds that culture of winning, you know, at the behest of his owner. And, you know, ultimately it goes up to ownership, what their goals are. But if you can take those goals and then go out and build a structure that can execute the things that you need to do to be successful and reach those goals, then you're going to be successful.
One more time, tell us about the business that you're running as well. This is a wonderful virtual reality experience, not only for quarterbacks, but also for everyone.
Yeah, again, Sports Virtual Training Systems, VTS. It's called the QB Sim. We're in at UCLA right now. Chip Kelly has adopted that for the Bruins, and they've been able to turn things around here lately on the back end of the season. We're going into the College Football Hall of Fame, which I'm really excited about, right before the Peach Bowl, as a permanent installation there for fans to kind of see the future of football training. And we've demoed with Nick Saban at Alabama. He loved it. I was just out at Notre Dame with Brian Kelly, and looks like Notre Dame may come on board. So we've been talking to the top programs, trying to get them involved. Have spoken with the Broncos. Have a chance to speak with the Colts here pretty soon. So we're really excited. I do think it is the future of the sport. It's a safer way to train, and I think it's a way to fill that gap where young quarterbacks and players aren't able to get those reps that we talk about and develop in the manner they need to develop.
Could a high school
quarterback
go there?
Yes, yeah, exactly. We're all the way down to the high school level. Some of the elite training camps and whatnot that quarterbacks go to, I use elite as in name only from the standpoint of we've spoken with elite camps that is, they're associated with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but Glazier Clinics, we've spoken with them. So yes, this is something that we see from both the top down and the bottom up. Get it instituted at the high school level, kids getting used to learning the game at a slower speed, and then ratchet up that speed to see if they can, match that. And then at the top down, quarterbacks at the professional level being able to hone their skills. And we feel like, hey, as it comes from the bottom up and the top down, that hopefully eventually it becomes part of how football is played and coached and how players develop.
Maybe it could even work for somebody who's 33 years old, used to play tight end at the University of Colorado. That might work for me too, right?
Yeah, we got to get you down there in it. Now, don't ask me to throw because I'm a little wishbone fullback. I can't even raise my arm above my head.
Yeah. But it'd be great to be able to go there. You should talk to the University of Colorado, by the way. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there.
Well, my partner's Craig Oaks. He's an old buff.
Okay.
So,
We'll get that done.